Hey, do you like a good thriller? Do you like a book that keeps you on the edge of your seat, begging for that next page? Oh, do I have a treat for you. My name is Vin Dacquino. Our next guest is Susan Berliner. Susan, let's talk writing.
Thank you.
What a pleasure to have you here. Your books are indeed thrillers. But I know that thrillers don't just happen. They develop over a lifetime. I want to know, who is Susan Berliner? When did this thing called writing begin for you?
Well, Vinny, I've been a writer my whole life, really.
Ah.
But I haven't been a novelist for a very long time.
Oh.
It all started with Dust. And the way it started was, I worked for the Penny Saver for many, many years. I was the promotion manager. And as the promotion manager, I did a lot of editorial things. I did contests.
Great practice.
I did all sorts of fun things. And I was always looking for interesting stories. And one day, I found a little article about a dust devil. A dust devil, which I had no idea what it was.
There's a vacuum cleaner thing?
They're
Oh,
little
wow.
mini tornadoes, and they develop in the spring in calm, clear days, and they just kind of cause havoc. And this little mini tornado killed a man in...
So the real dust devils. I mean,
Yeah, this was a bad one.
Wow.
It imploded an auto body shop, and it killed the man underneath.
Oh my God.
And the policeman who wrote it up said, weird things happen on calm, clear days. And it was such an interesting little tidbit.
Yeah.
And it happened in Maine. So I saved it because I thought Stephen King, one of my favorite authors,
Right.
would write a story about the dust. Well, I left the Penny Saver a couple of years later, put this little article away, then found it. And I realized Stephen King never wrote a story about dust devils.
Wow.
And I had an idea.
Had to do it.
Became Dust.
Wow. So I'm glad you said that, because often writers say to me, where does a good story begin? Well, it begins when it begins, at a good moment. Sometimes we see something and we say, whoa, what a great story that would be. So Dust began, it was from dust to dust, from dust to dust. And what is this book basically about?
Well, my little dust devil is an evil, menacing dust devil, a mysterious red, green, and blue little whirlwind.
Because you have that supernatural element to your stories.
Yes.
Which is really good. So this thing kind of has a mind of its own?
Yes, and it kind of terrorizes a little community, a condo community called Rockhaven, that's set in kind of the northern Westchester, Connecticut area with the Haven idea.
Right.
And my heroine, who is a librarian, finds this dust devil that comes and kind of attacks her area. And then she goes in pursuit of it with her ex-husband and an intuitive dog.
Wow. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the writing. It's interesting, with all of these writers that I meet, they all have their own little style, especially with the elements: plot, character, setting, theme, and tone. And I meet authors who say, oh yeah, my characters are based on people I know. Are these characters totally fictitious?
I think most of my characters are kind of combinations of people I know.
Yeah,
They're never one person. There might be a little bit of this person, a little bit of that person.
Yeah, because writers do that.
Yeah.
They take little pieces. They're always observing interesting personalities, interesting characters. What about setting? Now, do you see real settings when you're writing your book, or do you create these settings?
I kind of create the settings, but they're basically based on places that I know. Most of my books take place in the Northeast, in this area.
Yeah, where you... where you know best.
I do have one book that's based in northeastern Nevada.
Oh, wow.
Which is not a place I know, but it had a reason for being there.
Right, yeah, I understand. So, plot, character, setting. The tone of this is kind of somber and kind of.
It's not really. It's kind of a light horror story. That's the way my daughter termed it. I write horror. My favorite authors, as I said, are Stephen King and especially Dean Koontz.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They write horror. My horror is a little lighter.
Huh.
It's scary, but not that scary.
Because
my books are really appropriate for teens and up.
Oh, cool.
So they're to adults.
Plot. Now, do you know, writers come to me and they say, Mr. Dacquino, am I supposed to create an outline before I do the book? Or what do you do? Do you have an idea of where you're going?
No, you see, that's where I was a nonfiction writer my whole life.
Right.
And that's where fiction is so different. And it surprised me. Like, it was really totally a miracle to me the way the book developed. I knew, when I did Dust, I knew the beginning. And I did know my ending. I think you always kind of have to have an ending in mind.
Yep.
But I didn't know how I was going to get from A to Z.
I love that.
But when I sit down at the computer and write, the story just kind of flowed. The characters took over and wrote it.
That's what I try to get writers to do. And I say, look, don't write the book. Create a three-dimensional character.
Yes.
Let that character write the book. Let it go on its own. There were times that I would sit in front of that computer and I would start writing and that character would go on and I'd be laughing and crying at the right times because I'm reading this book for the first time.
That's my feeling exactly.
Yeah.
The same exact thing. It's entertaining to me as a writer.
That's the way it has to be.
That's the fun part of
and
writing.
And I tell writers, if you can get there, if you could get to that point, it's like catching the 2-foot trout. You know, once you do that, you'll go back and back and back because it's such an exciting feeling. There were times where I would sit down at 9 o'clock at night, and then all of a sudden my wife would tap me on the shoulder and she'd say, you better go take a shower. You have to be to work in an hour. You know, and I was like, oh my God. You know, and you sit there for like 6 hours, 7 hours, and you just keep going.
Well, your characters do take over. And I thought, when this happened to me, I thought, oh my God, this is the first time it's ever happened. Nobody else could have this kind of sensation.
Yeah.
Then you find, like you said, that it's so common. That's why authors love to write.
With certain writers.
Yeah.
And it's a blessing. It's a blessing. I call chapters where the character completely takes over gifts. You know, and my wife will say to me, wow, you finished that chapter already? You know, I'll go up and grab something to eat. And I say, yeah, it wrote itself. And some chapters will. Some chapters, forget about it. You're there forever trying to work it. Although, I do tell writers, you don't write a book. You work a book.
I think that's
What
true.
about the editing and revising?
That's the work.
Yeah,
that's the work.
You're right, that's the work.
That's the work. That's why, I mean, the writing is so much fun. It's the creative, fun part, but the real work is the going back and rewriting and editing. I cannot tell you how many times I go back and reread and redo these books. Oh my gosh.
It's like, when I told this young writer who left, you know, I said, listen, it's like building a house. You could build a house in a day.
Then
of course,
you have to fix it.
in 2 days it may fall down. So you have to support it.
Yes.
I can write a book. I literally can write a book in 24 hours. But rewriting it, going back, making sure that the ends all meet, that's the hard part.
Fleshing out characters, because when I write a book, I'm mostly getting the story across.
Yeah.
My characters are there, but then I have to go back and revisit them and build them up and give them backstories and there's just so much to do.
Speaking of backstories, you are the queen of backstories. What is the backstory behind Dust?
Well, Dust we talked about mostly with the
it's
that Dust Devil and all that.
And the death of that guy. Now, is there? I mean, how many people does this thing kill? in
I
this
can't
book?
get, but I did when I tabulated what it did to various people, and this
Okay.
one it did
So you
this
follow
to.
their lives?
This
then you
book
kill
is
'em.
this book is like a series of vignettes of people in this
Oh, good,
condo and what happens to each of them. They're short chapters, and lots of people get killed or maimed and all until the heroine.
And there is a
figures
happy
out-
ending.
There is a twist ending.
Oh,
there is a real
twister.
Good,
That makes
There is
sense.
a real good surprise ending in this.
Wow.
This one has
Peachwood Lake.
Peachwood
First of
Lake-
all, let's
oh.
put this one up here, and let's make sure they get a real good look at this book because it's a great read. So, Dust by Susan Berliner, definitely a book you should read, and there is a second book called Peachwood Lake. So tell me about Peachwood Lake.
Now, the backstory of Peachwood Lake was another newspaper article. This one was actually a front page story in the New York Times, titled something like, "It's Summer, Fish Jumping, That's Trouble." So I'm reading this story, and there's this jumping fish out of a lake, and it turns out in the Suwannee River in Florida, not a lake, there are these Gulf sturgeon that jump up every summer. They jump out of the water and they knock over boaters.
Whoa.
And they sometimes break arms and legs. They're very big, bony fish. They could be up to 200 pounds,
Wow.
8 feet long.
Wow.
And scientists have no idea why they jump every summer, why they hit people, but they do. So I thought, well, that's an interesting
Yeah.
story. But what would happen if there was a fish and it was a jumping armored fish? I said, let's make it real strong. And it disturbs this peaceful lake, which I set in Connecticut this time, called Peachwood Lake. And that's the story of Peachwood Lake.
You know, I want to focus for a second because I'm hearing you say something that I like. Do you find your stories in newspapers and magazines?
Well, these two I did. Then I started drifting on to other things.
But do you actually look through and say, I wonder if I could find a good story today?
No.
No. But I can imagine writers doing that. What a great idea. To go in and see if you could find a good, and it would also make a great writing assignment. I'm going to use that in some of my writing courses. You know, I teach some college writing courses.
To find
I'm gonna
an
have them do
article.
that. Find an article and write a story based on that article. And you can do the what if.
Sure.
You know, one student said to me one time, I said, look, write about what you know. He said, but what if your life is boring? You know, how can you write an exciting story if your life is boring? And I say, play the what if. Take it to a point and then go. Let that character take it where it wants to go. You make your own ending to that story.
Definitely.
So it could make a wonderful writing exercise.
I agree with you.
Good.
But in Peachwood Lake is kind of one reviewer called it a marvelous coming-of-age horror story.
Ooh.
Because the story involves I have a 13-year-old heroine named Katie Gonzalez who lives with her father by this lake, and when this terrible fish comes into play. And she's involved in her own terrifying growing up experiences. She's being bullied
Oh, boy.
by a nasty girl.
Yeah, that's today for you.
Yeah, and she's trying to be a young writer, and this fish happens, and she's dealing with her own things with the bully, and now the whole town is dealing with this terrible fish.
Wow. So would you classify this as a YA book?
It's kind of a YA book, and my books
Good.
kind of overlap, and it's
Yeah.
also an adult. I mean, people from about 12 to 100 read my books.
Yeah, well, that's good. And you know, especially young adult, you know, hopefully teachers are trying to inspire children, get them to write and
to read, yeah.
Because writers are readers.
Definitely.
Readers are writers. And it's so important,
agree.
especially in this day and age where, you know, you could turn on a TV show and it's so easy to not read. But reading is so important, and your books do keep readers on the edge.
Yeah, and they're fast-paced. They're not difficult reading. They're fun reads.
All right, tell me a little bit about Susan Berliner's profile as a writer. When do you write?
Okay, my writing routine is basically in the first thing in the morning. I go down to the den with the computer, lock myself in the room, take the phone out. I have a sign now that says, do not disturb. Nobody is allowed in. I do not take phone calls or anything. And I just lock myself and I write. I don't write that much each day. I try to write a scene a day.
Oh,
and
that's
then
good.
I review
A
the
discipline.
the previous day's work. And basically, very slowly but surely, it develops into a book.
Just two things I'm thinking about. One is when you said that you know your beginning and you
Yes.
know your end, then you have to fill in the middle.
Exactly.
I'm the same way. However, I know the beginning and I know the end when I start. Sometimes that end changes.
Changes, yes.
Yeah. So
I have a funny story.
Oh,
the
good.
book I've written 3 books, but I've actually written a 4th and the 5th one that I'm writing now, which is a doomsday and end of the world book called
Oh.
The Touchers. I thought I was finished. I had written 80,000 words, which for me is quite a lot of words. And my characters wouldn't let me end the book.
Yeah, that's funny.
They wouldn't
That's
let me
funny.
end.
Yep.
They said, no, it's just the beginning.
No.
So I'm writing a second part
Yeah.
to a book I thought was
You
over.
have to look at Sybil Luddington. Now this is nonfiction.
Right, I know
Sybil
her.
Luddington haunts me to this day. I don't know if you know her story.
I do know her
When
story.
I started, she was the mother of 6 children. She was married to a guy named Henry. I mean, by the time I got done, I realized that almost everything we knew about this woman, from her ride to her death, was wrong.
Really?
So I couldn't put it down. I had to call my publisher. I said, Ray, I can't end this book yet. He said, well, but it's been 2 years, Vin. And I said, yeah, but I keep finding information that's wrong. And I have to fix it, and I have to get this from cradle to death. So I have to get it right. And she wouldn't leave me alone. So nonfiction and fiction. Sometimes if you create those characters, they're as real people. And when they become real, they're going to tell you when it's right and when
Exactly.
it's wrong. And in terms of when is the book done, Ray Bradbury, who is a wonderful author, Ray Bradbury
One of my favorites.
said to a student once, he said, the student said, Mr. Bradbury, how do you know when a book is done? He said, the book is done when I can read the entire manuscript from the first page to the last and not make any changes. And I said, I'd have one book my entire life.
My book would never be done. I kind of modify it, and it's when I have no major changes, very minor, like commas or little tiny things.
I very seldom read a book, my own books, after they're published, because they drive me nuts.
You'll find
I look
something.
and I go, oh no, man, and
I
I
should have
just don't
done
want to read.
this.
Yeah, I should have changed this. I should have changed it. No, this can't work. So I leave it alone. I go on to the next book and try not to pay attention. Yeah. So there is a point when we feel the book is
done.
It's done.
Yes.
It has to go in. Editor. What about your experience with editors?
Well,
Do they drive you nuts?
no, because I am actually an editor, and my husband is an editor, an English
good. Oh,
teacher.
yeah.
So I've been a professional
nice.
editor.
Nice to marry an English teacher when
And
you're a writer.
So basically, so our books are
Yeah,
well
so that's good.
edited.
So you can
Yes.
edit it
Yes.
beforehand.
Yes.
So when it's ready, it's ready. So you've done Dust, Peachwood Lake, and there is a new one that's happening. Grab Disappearance right there.
The Disappearance, if I can.
Oh,
It's kind of wedged
grab
in
the whole
there.
thing. Just grab the whole thing just right
okay.
Yep, there you go.
The Disappearance.
There you go.
Okay.
We'll put that there.
The Disappearance is my new book.
Here, let me.
Okay.
It's easier if I do it. Hold that up right there.
Okay.
right.
After as I said, I found these 2 books, the ideas in newspapers, but then I decided, I said, I love certain genres, and one of my favorite genres is time travel. So
Me too. I love it.
So I said, how about I write a time travel book? So I did. I wrote The Disappearance, which is a time travel book, but it's a time travel thriller. It's about a young woman named Gillian Keating who lives with a boyfriend and who suddenly has a fight with her and disappears. And she has no idea where he's gone. But then things happen where it turns out that he is framing her for his murder.
Oh.
And he has disappeared into time. And she has got.
Now, how does he do it? Is it a time machine or?
I'm not going to give it away.
Oh.
Because,
Buy the book.
Because we writers, see, that's why I love time travel.
Yeah.
You could, since
There's
it doesn't
so many
exist,
ways to do it. Yeah.
you can have a time, like a time
Yeah.
machine.
Madeline L'Angle used to have that warp in time.
You can have a warp, you can have a portal, you can have somebody, they can dream into time. You could do whatever you want. You make all the rules.
Yeah. See, I
love it.
That is the beauty of writing. And that's what I try to tell some of the newer writers. I say, listen, you are the creator. You can create the world as you want it. Is there any such thing as a time travel? There is in your book. You create the world. Make it happen. And there's so many different things. Also, the other thing that sometimes that writers don't understand is that you have so many alternatives. There's a million directions you can go. That's why it's great to create a character who goes on his or her own. Let them tell you where they want to go. And let those characters take you to the end of your book. Sounds great. So you have 3 books. They're out there. Let's talk just for a minute about what a writer does. Now, aside from this wonderful show, how do you get people to know about these books? Not easy.
It's difficult because there are so many good writers out there.
Yeah.
I have a website that my www.
Good. We have that on.
Yep. And I have a big Facebook group. And I'm constantly trying to do things in the area. I do a lot of book signings. I do a lot of events.
I know you came to our Meet the Writers.
Yes, I
We
do
had about
those too.
35, 40 writers there.
Yeah.
And that's an opportunity to do it, but you have to get out there.
Yes.
What writers sometimes don't realize is that this is a business. It's a business. Writing is only one small part of it. There's writing, and there's rewriting, and there's editing, there's revising, dealing with editors, dealing with publishers, dealing with bookstores, dealing with fans, signing and autographing books and getting out there. So there's an awful lot to it. Yeah. Also, usually when you're right there in the middle of a good book, there's another book, cooking on the stove in the back of your head. Tell me about what's cooking.
Well, as I said, these 3 books are written, and now I've written a book called Corsonia, which is, I've decided to do my favorite topics, and that's a mind control book.
Oh.
That's the one that's set in Nevada, and that's a mind control story.
Wow.
And that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then I mentioned the other one, The Touchers, which is the one I'm reading, my end of the world story. My every author, novelist has an end of the world story.
Do you work on more than one book at a time?
In a sense, I do. I think the idea is always to be, what I like doing is always writing a book, editing one book, and then trying to promote or I'm always trying to work on several books at a time in different stages. I can't write more than one book at a time.
One of the writer's biggest enemies is procrastination.
Yes.
You have trouble with that?
I try not to. That's why I try to do the routine. I try, if you write every day, I think that's, if you can get into the habit of writing.
Create a discipline so that you know that from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock you're writing. That's why I write in the middle of the night. You and I had talked about that.
Right, yeah.
I have to write in the middle of the night because my children, my grandchildren, my wife, my car, my yard, my garage, my laundry, all those things are demanding my time too. And you can't do that at 3 o'clock in the morning. So 3 o'clock in the morning, there's no one I can call and say, oh yeah, you know what? I know this book is important, but I haven't called so-and-so, and a month, so I need to call. Not at 3 o'clock in the morning, you don't. So that's when I write, and that works for me to do that. But procrastination, there's that little voice that says, not now, not now.
I saw a really good quote. I'm also on Pinterest, which is kind of fun.
Oh,
It's
yes,
kind of,
yeah.
you put things into boards, and I have one called Writing Quotes, which is a lot of fun, and they're very inspirational
Oh, wow.
because they help. And the one little one that I don't know who the author is, but it said, here are the rules. One, put butt in chair. 2, put words on page. Chair is optional. And I
Yeah,
love it.
that's
It's
right.
true.
You're
That's
right.
all you
You're
have
right.
to do is write.
Yeah, but it's so,
Right.
that's, when I go to schools, I say, listen to me. How many people here want to be writers? Hands go up. I say, how many people are actually in the middle of a piece of
writing.
work right now? Only
One
half the
hand's
hands go
right.
up. Yeah. And I say, listen to me. Talkers talk. Writers write. Don't talk about it, write it. Now, pre-writing, granted, sometimes it takes a while to create a three-dimensional character. And the character has to find himself. However, if you don't take the time to work that writer and give him a chance to have life, you're never going to get this book done. So you need the time to focus. You need the time to say everything you have to say, which brings us to the point where we're almost out of time. So, Susan, I want you to reach inside, look at that audience, and tell them what they need to know to be as good as Susan Berliner.
I don't even know how good I am, but the
You're
fact
good.
is,
You're good.
I love to write. And I think if anybody, so many people come up to me and they say, oh, I want to be a writer. I want to write. I've always wanted to write.
Writers, right.
Right. That's what I tell them. I mean,
Good.
there are no rules. There
Good.
really aren't.
Yep.
You just have to find
Discipline.
a time to write.
One of
and
my
write.
favorite writers said to me, Vinny, you want to write your first book? And this was back before I did. Write a poem a day. And I said, a poem a day? I'm not even a poet. He said, no, write a poem a day. And you will be surprised. That poem will be 2 poems, 3 poems, a book. Absolutely correct. Kiss the Candy Days Goodbye came exactly from that, creating a discipline. So create a discipline to write, give yourself a good reason to write, and read this book, this book, this book. Get to know Susan Berliner.
They're all available on my website, on my
Good.
order page. You can
Go to that website. You've seen it up there on the screen.
they're available for ebooks
And
you know,
all local bookstores.
yeah, you can order them there, Amazon or Barnes and Noble.
Wonderful.
Whatever.
Susan, I cannot thank you enough for being with us. You've done a great job. We've given some good tips out there to people who really do want to be writers. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with Susan and myself on Let's Talk